From the heartland of America and the gateway to the West, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Laurie. Welcome to Coast AM. Later tonight, the history of exorcisms. Pull those blankets up. Here's what's happening. Consumers see inflation falling considerably over the next year to the lowest level since July of 21. According to a key Federal Reserve Bank of New York survey, a potentially reassuring sign for the U.S. Central Bank as it tries to cool surging prices. The average expectation is that the inflation rate will be up 5% 1 year from now, according to the New York Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Expectations. Americans are less certain about the prospect of inflation falling over the long term, however. In the weeks leading up to Sunday's violent attacks in Brazil's Congress and other government buildings, the country's social media channels surged with calls to attack gas stations, refineries, and other infrastructure, as well as for people to come to a war cry party in the capital. According to Brazilian social media researchers, they aren't happy with the way elections are going out there. 2022 was a banner year for artificial intelligence, and particularly taking into account the launch of OpenAI's incredibly impressive ChatGPT. The industry is showing no signs of stopping, but for some industry leaders, chatbots and image generators are far from the final robotic frontier. Next up, they want to deal with robotic consciousness. Lauren Weinstein's with us, our expert. What is this, Lauren?
Well, this is indeed a fascinating area, especially when we put aside science fiction and think about these issues in the real world. And the most basic question that we have to start with, naturally, is what is consciousness? And we don't have a really satisfactory answer to this. Some of the recent work coming out of neurobiology seems to suggest that consciousness may actually be an artifact, functionally an artifact of other brain activity, sort of an experience riding along with the brain, not necessarily a function of the brain itself per se. And there are studies of persons who have had brain diseases and brain injuries that have tended to perhaps validate this view. So how can we really prove whether a human or other animal or a machine is conscious, sentient, self-aware, other than through our own personal assumption we each have of ourselves being conscious? Now, putting all that aside, if for the sake of the argument we don't assume that there are religious or mystical or paraphysical aspects to consciousness, and we do assume that consciousness is an artifact of the physical brain's complex operations, then it's difficult to see why a sufficiently complex human-built creation, like a computer AI system that happened not to be biological, but still approached or perhaps exceeded the complexity of our animal brains, might not achieve a form of consciousness, of self-awareness, that would almost certainly not be identical to ours, but might represent a similar experience for that machine. Now, it seems unlikely that the approaches we're taking right now to AI and computers would enable consciousness in these systems, but we're really in the infancy of these areas. And my personal view is that we'd be, at the very least, exhibiting a bit of arrogance to assume that a complex mechanism other than biological brains could never become self-aware. But this does bring us back to earlier points, one being, how would we really know that something is conscious?
That's right.
And naturally, that question would likely become even harder to answer when dealing with consciousness of a very different kind from our own. Some of these kinds of questions, when you really come down to it, are more philosophical than technical, but these are issues that will become more and more important to us as the scope and power of our technologies continue to so rapidly expand. And frankly, I think we could learn a lot from a self-aware machine that thinks notably different than we do, assuming we can avoid these science fiction, conscious computer decides to wipe out humanity type scenarios, of course.
I was going to say, Lauren, can we trust them?
That will remain to be seen. When people talk about evil computers, evil conscious computers, I would tend to think that the consciousness would be so different from our own that we probably would not have a lot to compete for. In other words, we might find, instead of there being a competition between computer intelligence and human intelligence, we might form a partnership.
Could be. Lauren Weinstein, our expert on the Internet. Several days ago, there was a gorgeous full moon. What else is going on in the skies? Let's check in with Dr. Sky, Stephen Cates. Hi, Stephen.
Hi there, George. We got some great information here. Solar activity, as many would imagine, is on the increase. Well, George, here we go. Solar cycle 25, as we know, is ramping up. And now we have at least 6 major sunspot groups on the visible disk of the sun. Just hours ago, a new sunspot group known as AR-3184 pumped out a new 1.9 class X-flare, but luckily not in our direction. But sunspot group AR-3182 sent a powerful 1.2 X-flare off the left side of the sun on Saturday. And looking directly at the Earth now is sunspot group AR-3181, which could send a large flare, or CME, our way. Well, George, this is the beginning of X-flare season on the sun, and activity will only increase as we move deeper into 2023. The sunspot number today is 117, and also active region 3184 of that flare triggered off at least 5 simultaneous eruptions all along the sun in just some 90 minutes. So there's proof. On other subjects, light pollution continues to be a major concern with those in the astronomical and nature communities, and some of the world's astronomical observatories with dark skies are seeing increases in man-made light pollution as of 2021. How about this? Only a small percentage of the world's observatories were at the less than 1% increase margin, but many have seen the night sky brighten by 10% or more. And, George, this is not a good trend, as light pollution is not as prevalent in the South America region, as some of the world's largest and darkest skies are located in the Chilean deserts of the Atacama. The darkest skies on the Earth, at least that we know of, are at or near the Paranal Observatory in Chile. That's the home of the next largest telescope, the ESO's 39-meter extremely large telescope, which is under construction. But add to that, many satellites which crowd the nighttime sky and interfere with large telescope imaging. What do we say, George? Just cherish any dark skies you can find. We also find out that the Earth's ozone layer is thought to have been destroyed some 250 million years ago. How and why? Possibly by intense volcanic activity on the Earth. But the Earth heals, and ozone layers have somewhat returned over many areas of the Earth. Simply, ozone, or oxygen-3, triatomic oxygen, helps prevent ultraviolet UVB radiation from harming skin, etc. But now we wrap it up with the live sky. Here's something great. Look to the southeast sky at 10 p.m. on these clear January nights for the most brilliant star in the heavens, the brilliant star Sirius. Its magnitude is minus 1.46. That's technical, but it's 8.6 light years distant. It's a blazing blue A1 class star, George, with a classic Da2 white dwarf, simply known as Sirius B, the size of the Earth. Hard to believe, but Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens at night, is only some 250 million years old compared to the 4 billion-year-old sun. Well, Sirius is actually going to increase in brilliance over the next 60,000 years as the star system is moving closer to the Earth. More information always at theskylive.com. Emails, we love them. DrSkyShow@gmail.com. And we always say it and mean it. Always remember to keep your eyes to the skies. I'm your navigator on the highway to the heavens. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sky. We'll talk to you next week, of course. Just how much does the U.S. government know about UFOs? What are they hiding? In a moment, well-known attorney Daniel Sheehan maybe with some answers for us on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Daniel Sheehan, our special guest, back with us. Let me tell you a little bit about Daniel. He holds a unique perspective as special counsel to the 1977 U.S. Congressional Research Service's official report to President Jimmy Carter at the time on the potential existence of extraterrestrial intelligence in the UFO phenomenon. 1994, the attorney for the late Dr. John Mack for the Harvard Medical School, author of Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, as the former 20-year general counsel of the 2001 Disclosure Project, general counsel of the 2013 Citizens Public Hearings on Disclosure, and also as the current attorney for Luis Elizondo, the director of the 10-year top-secret United States Pentagon classified information of the UFO UAP phenomenon. We will talk about that in a moment. Daniel was also the 1970s and 80s general counsel to the United States Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C. based National Office of Social Ministry. Daniel, always great talking to you and nice meeting you at these live UFO events. I get a kick out of running into you.
Hey, great, George. I'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.
Won't be long.
You're going to be at Conscious Life Expo this year?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be there. I think you and I will both be there. We're going to do some events together, I think.
I'm looking forward to that indeed. Danny, you are now the attorney for Luis Elizondo, who was a security officer for a number of years as the top secret Pentagon investigation of UFOs. Tell us how you got involved with Luis.
Well, Lou called me shortly after he had become a member of the To the Stars Academy. And he was quite upset. He had revealed, as you know, and as most of the listeners know, he and Chris Mellon had brought to the New York Times these three now rather famous videos of the Tic Tac UFOs that were taken by the F-18 Super Hornets, off the aircraft carriers, and had brought these to the New York Times. The New York Times board of editors had agreed to publish these, and they put the videos up on internet, and all of a sudden the whole world started to change, with the New York Times acknowledging that these were real. The Defense Department in general took the position, yes, these are real videos. And then a number of people inside the Defense Department who apparently didn't get the memo that the times had changed started issuing public statements saying that there was no such thing as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Project. They never had heard of Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo was just making all of this up, trying to attack his credibility pursuant to a very old program that had been functioning inside the Defense Department and the American intelligence communities of trying to destroy the credibility of anybody who was taking serious attention to the UFO issue. And so Lou was upset about this, not only about the fact that they were attacking him and lying about the existence of the program, but the reason that he had resigned back in 2017 was that he was extremely frustrated about the fact that for 10 years he had been part of this major secret program, and he was still being blocked by all kinds of people in the Defense Department and various intelligence agencies. He would go to these major defense contractors that he was led to believe were involved in attempting to do an analysis of the UFO phenomenon, and he was being blocked, even though he was the head of this program. And so he attempted to complain up the chain of command to get to the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Defense Mattis, and he was being blocked by people above him in the chain. So he resigned in protest, brought these videos, which he got declassified. He brought them to the New York Times, and he then contacted me and said that he wanted to file a complaint with the Inspector General of the Defense Department, complaining not only, it's important, not only about the particular individuals who were lying about the existence of the program and lying about his role in it, but he was objecting in general to the United States Defense Department and all of the government agencies lying to the American people. He knew, based on his knowledge that he had gathered in first person for over a 10-year period, that there was an extraordinary amount of information that was known about the UFO phenomenon in the nature of their origins, the technology that they displayed, et cetera. And the government agencies were lying to the American people about this. So he objected to this, to the Defense Department and to the Inspector General's office, saying he thought that was unconstitutional for the executive branch to be lying about such a profoundly important issue, that in a democracy, our people have a right to participate in deciding what the policies are going to be with regard to this phenomenon. And so he contacted me, and he knew that, as you had mentioned at the top of the show, that I had been involved in a number of these major professional-level investigations of the UFO phenomenon, dating all the way back to the President Carter's administration. It represented Dr. John Mack, and I'd gotten to interview in preparation for doing a grand rounds to Harvard University about the probabilities of extraterrestrial intelligence and the reality of the UFO phenomenon. And so he reached out to me, and we had a series of 2 or 3 lengthy conversations in which we were exploring each other's beliefs about this and what our intentions were, et cetera. And he came to have confidence that he and I shared a good faith objective in trying to get out as much of this information as we could possibly get out to the American public that did not in any way pose any serious danger to the national security of the United States, which he and I both concluded was minimal.
Right.
Because the highest level officials that he'd ever encountered, he realized that the more they knew about the UFO issue, the less worried they seemed to be that this constituted any kind of really national security threat. And so he was baffled by that. And so he and I decided to join together to work to get this information to the public. I'd been involved in this as of that time for over 40 years. He'd been involved in it for 10 years or more. And so we joined together to pursue this and started having a series of meetings with the staff of the Defense Department's Inspector General's office. And so those became extraordinarily interesting meetings because these men, you could tell, they had not been briefed in on the level of knowledge that the Defense Department had about the UFO phenomenon. And so that when we got into these meetings with them, these closed-door meetings in the Inspector General's offices, they became totally enthralled about what this information was that Lou had and a lot of the information that I had about this. And we began sharing this information with them and trying to inspire them to participate in an investigation of this. And they began a major official evaluation. The United States Defense Department began the day we filed this official complaint. That very afternoon, they announced that they were going to be conducting a major evaluation of the procedures and history of the relationship of the Defense Department agencies and military services with this issue of the UFO phenomenon. And so that they adopted this new term called UAP, an identified aerial phenomenon. And then they realized that from the data they were getting, and we'll be able to talk more about this as we proceed tonight, that these UFOs were appearing not only in the atmosphere, so it was a lot more than unidentified aerial phenomenon. These were also these vehicles were also functioning under the ocean. They would come down from over 80,000 feet down to the very surface of the sea in 0.7 of a second, and then they would come to a complete abrupt stop, generating something like 600 Gs that would basically turn any human being into soup that was inside the vehicle, but also totally dismembering any vehicle that we knew about. And then they would go underwater, and they would proceed at hundreds of miles an hour under the water.
With their lights on, because some Navy crewmen have seen lights under the water.
That's right. Well, not only that, but they track them on radar under the water. So that these are what they call transmedium vehicles. It sounds a little mystical, but it's really just that they function in outer space. They function in our airspace where we have atmospheric pressure, and they function under the surface of the oceans. And so they began this major. They kept insisting this is not an investigation, but it's an evaluation. And they were conducting an investigation in response to our complaint. Luis Elizondo and I had drafted this complaint and filed it with them. And so we began, this series of extremely interesting conversations with the Inspector General's office. Were
they open to you, Daniel?
Oh, yes. It was. They didn't quite know what to do about it at the beginning. They were perfectly aware because the people that were in the Inspector General's office were career officers in the military from one branch or another, and they realized that from their entire career, this was a subject that was just not a career builder to be interested in the UFO issue, because this protocol had been operational to try to destroy the credibility, the reputation, and the career of anybody who tried to press into this area to start to secure information about what our government knew about this. So these guys had gotten that memo that they're not supposed to be involved in this. So when we sat down and started explaining the information to them, that Lou would give them the names of people that he had talked to that had direct encounters with the vehicles. I was sharing direct information of people that I had talked to in the first person that knew about the technology that we were exploring with them. I laid all this out, and we just kept giving them name after name, telephone numbers, email contact numbers for all these people. And it was clear that they became convinced very soon that we were in absolute, total good faith in trying to...
Well, that's important. Danny, hold on. We're at a break. We'll come back and talk more. Plus, you then filed a second complaint. We want to know about that when we come back. We'll take your calls next hour with Daniel Sheehan, who's trying to get some answers on UFOs for all of us. And so jump aboard when we start taking calls. Lots more to talk with him about and his work to try to uncover that mystery when we come back in a moment on Coast to Coast. Welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, along with Danny Sheehan, as we talk about investigating UFOs. Danny, so you and Luis ended up filing a second complaint. What was that for?
Well, what happened, George, is that after the complaint that we lodged at the Defense Department, the Defense Department not only began this major evaluation of all the different military services and agencies inside the Defense Department, but it also fired a number of individual people that had been lying about this program. And so Lou, who had resigned from the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was hired by a private contractor and ended up becoming the chief advisor on the UFO phenomenon to the United States Space Force. And he was in that position for a number of months. And the process began again with people inside the intelligence community coming forward and trying to generate a resistance to the program of revealing information about the UFOs. And so he said that, look, we're going to file a complaint with the Inspector General of the intelligence community as well, so that this other staff can get on board, because this history of attacking citizens who are trying to get to the bottom of this UFO issue has been going on from not only the Defense Department, but from also the intelligence community. And so now he brought this additional complaint to the Inspector General of the intelligence community. And in this one, we emphasized the fact that there was this general problem of the continuation of the lying about this program, that they kept on pretending that they didn't know, that they were engaged in this kind of modified hangout position, and that we began having meetings with people over on the Hill in the United States Senate, the Intelligence Committee, the Defense Committees, over with the House representatives and the Senate. And the members of the Senate and House started getting upset about the fact that they were being excluded from this information. And so we began to work together to try to get a special bill passed, which was focused initially inside the Senate Intelligence Committee, because we had the support both of the Mark Warner, who was the Democratic chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, but also Marco Rubio, who was the Republican leader of the staff in the members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And so that we had this unique bipartisan support for getting information to the Congress, extracting it from the Defense Department and from the intelligence community. And so we began to put the pressure on inside the Congress. And so what happened is the intelligence community, Inspector General, then began looking into this to try to determine what it is that had been going on, what was the history of this, because a lot of the people that were in the intelligence community now, are of a whole different generation than those members of the intelligence community and the Defense Department that began this program of obfuscating and lying and covering up and attacking citizens who were trying to get to the bottom of this. So there was an effort to try to have a whole new generation of people come forward. And so that the intelligence community's Inspector General is now engaged in exploring what's going on and has been dialoguing with people in the United States Senate Intelligence Committee. And we've now come together, and to everyone's, I think most citizens' astonishment, but they don't know much about it yet, that the United States Congress has passed a new law, a law, Section 703 of the National Intelligence Authorization Act, that has just been passed on December 23rd of this year, December 23rd of 2022, passed a law commanding the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence to stand up a brand new office, the Joint Project Office, that is now going to be joined together by the Defense Department and the intelligence community to demand that that office be given all of the information that every single military agency and every military service, every intelligence community agency, and every private military contractor has ever had in their possession, all the way back to 1947, very specific year, all the way back to January of 1947, they are now commanded to turn over this information to the Joint Project Office that's going to be run by the Defense Department and the Director of National Intelligence.
You might get to read the Roswell papers, huh?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And they, in fact, one of the commands that they've been given is to hand over all of the information. This is in Section 703 of the Act, subsection 11, which says specifically they are required to update and provide to Congress every single effort that has been underway on the ability to capture or exploit discovered unidentified aerospace phenomena. So that this is they've been commanded now by Congress to turn this information over to this Joint Project Office, and that office is commanded by this new law to turn this over every 90 days. Every 90 days, they have to give all of the information to the United States Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee and the Defense Committees. They have to start turning over all of this information to the United States Congress. So what has happened as a result of Luis Elizondo and the work, for example, by Chris Mellon, who's been instrumental in this, and others, that we've been going and meeting with the members of the Senate and the House, and they have now stood up on their back legs, and they've confronted the executive branch, Defense Department, and intelligence community, and ordered them to turn over this information to Congress. Now, that is an extraordinarily important step, an extraordinary step. And 99% of the people in the country do not know that this law was passed on December 23rd of 2022. It's a brand new law, and they have 120 days all until April 21st.
Well, thank God we've got you to watchdog this.
That's right. Well, that's what we're doing now. That we're in the process of setting up a unique 501c3 public interest organization, like you might call it the UFO C3, is being set up now to watchdog this whole process, to monitor what's going on at the United States Senate Intelligence Community or Intelligence Committee, and to make sure that they're enforcing this law, making sure that the Defense Department military services are turning this information over, that the CIA and the DIA and also the National Geospatial Intelligence Center, which most people don't even know what that is. It's a special intelligence center that has been functioning for a long time now, gathering. This is where the Roswell information resides right now. Is it the National Global Intelligence the Global Geospatial Intelligence Agency has that information, and I know this because I talked directly to the head of the Central Intelligence Agency program that has developed the special surveillance mechanisms to surveil the presence of UFOs in our atmosphere. And so I know that this is going on now. And so they know I know. And so the setting up of this 501c3, we're going to try to assemble all the information that we can get from all the different UFO agencies and the UFO citizens groups, et cetera, and make sure that the members of the United States Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee have this information, so they can't pretend that they don't have it. And it isn't going to do any good to say, oh, there's a documentary film that has interviewed these people, because they can say, well, we never happened to see it. But
right.
For example, you remember when the hearing was had, the House Committee brought in front of them two people from the executive branch who pretended they didn't even know that a UFO had appeared over our Minuteman nuclear sites and shut down our nuclear missiles. They said, oh, we've never even heard of that. So we can't allow them to get away with that. We've got to set up a 501c3 watchdog citizens group that is going to be monitoring the conduct of the intelligence committees the conduct of the intelligence community and the defense agencies to turn this information over to Congress. That's one of the first steps. And then we're going to start putting the pressure on Congress to turn as much of this information as possible over to the American public in a systematic way so that we can, through this 501c3, through the UFO C3, we can start to prepare our human family for direct contact with extraterrestrial civilization. That is going to be our job.
What got you involved in this, Danny, in the first place, years ago?
Well, it was in 1976, right after President Carter was elected. As people know, President Carter had seen a UFO back when he was governor of Georgia. So when he was elected president, one of the first things he did is he reached out to the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, who was at that time George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., who was the head of the CIA under President Gerald Ford, and asked the head of the CIA, George Bush, to turn over the information to him as the newly elected president. And George Bush refused to do that. And so President Carter reached out to the Congressional Research Service, the Science and Technology Division, and asked them to prepare a secret report to the president on, one, the probability of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence elsewhere in the universe, and what relationship that might have to the UFO phenomenon. And I was contacted because I was general counsel at the United States Jesuit headquarters in their National Social Ministry office. And I was contacted by Marcia Smith, who was the head of the Congressional Research Service, Science and Technology Division. And she asked if I would become special counsel to that committee, that special task force, to find out what the Catholic Church and the Vatican archives knew about the UFO phenomenon. So I came on in that particular capacity to do that work. I ended up being designated to brief the top 50 scientists at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at the SETI program out in Pasadena on the theological implications of contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. I brought the motion to the Washington Interreligious Staff Council, the head of the 54 major religious denominations in the country, to get them to set up a task force to try to get out ahead of this thing, to start preparing our human family for the realization that we are not, in fact, at the apex of the pyramid of all conscious life in the universe, and that this is going to be an extraordinarily important point in our history of our human family to come to grips with where we fit in to the order of our entire galaxy. You know, that it isn't life just on one planet. I mean, really seriously, imagine we live at a time where a substantial portion of people are told by the authorities that we are the only sentient species in the entire universe. That somehow the entire universe of tens of trillions of galaxies, you know, exists solely as the stage upon which to play out the drama of our one species on one planet, you know, evolving from the primordial slime up into voyagers in the stars. And that is preposterous. And so we have got to readjust our understanding of who we are, where we fit into the universe. And the Jesuit order, which is the largest single order in the Catholic Church, which is the largest single religious denomination of all of Western civilization, has in fact called upon us to reach out and begin this dialogue for the citizens to start having a fundamental dialogue about the philosophical and theological implications of the realization that there's extraterrestrial intelligence. And I, as the general counsel of the Jesuit headquarters in their National Social Ministry office, reached out immediately to the spokesperson, who was Father Jose Gabriel Funes, who issued the public statement on behalf of the Vatican on November 11th of 2009, and stated that the moment has arrived for our human family to begin this extraordinarily important conversation, because much sooner than had been previously anticipated, we were going to discover life elsewhere in the universe.
And I believe the Vatican said, too, that the belief in extraterrestrials does not negate one's belief in God.
No, they've said those things. There's some fairly low-level, low-conscious things that have been said to try to accommodate people that are being taken totally by surprise for this information. But there's also an extraordinarily sophisticated level of discussion going on now in theological circles and in philosophical circles to try to come to grips with readjusting our human worldview so that we understand where we fit into the universe. This is the discussion that has to be undertaken by our citizens, because you cannot rely upon the government institutions to do this for us. We've got to do this ourselves and demonstrate that we're worthy of respect, worthy of participating as co-equals with others in our galaxy. And so we have to work hard to overcome these silly things that we do of poisoning our own planet, with carbon and petroleum and contaminating our planet. The UFO people have been talking about this for decades. You know that, and people know that. Like the aerial school phenomenon over in Africa, with UFO lands right in the middle of the playing field and communicates to all the children that we have to stop polluting our planet because we're going to kill all of our planet. We have to stop nuclear war, nuclear weapons, and deal with global climate change and stop the contamination of our planet. These are things we have to do as minimal requirements for our being worthy of entering into participating in our galaxy with other species that have had millions, some of them millions of years more of time to evolve their sentient senses and their philosophical approaches and theological approaches. So we've got to do this, and this is what the UFO C3 is going to be designed to do.
Great. Daniel, hold on for a second. We're at the top of the hour. We'll come back and talk more and take phone calls with you. Daniel Sheehan's websites are linked up at coasttocoastam.com. He's going to be at the Conscious Life Expo in February. Full information on his appearance and mine at coasttocoastam.com and the highlight reel and the with our special guest, Daniel Sheehan, as we talk about legislation, UFOs, what government is hiding. Lots more to talk with him about, and we'll take your calls this hour on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back. George Norrie here with Daniel Sheehan. Daniel, tell us about what you've uncovered that the U.S. government may have already back engineered a UFO.
Well, this is one of the $64 questions. It's quite clear that Admiral Wilson, for example, has talked, who was the J2, he was the Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he has confronted some of the major private contractors, military contractors, who have acknowledged to him that they have been put into possession of downed UFO craft that have been recovered by the United States Defense Department and our military agencies that have been assigned to recover these craft, that they've been engaged in the process of trying to back engineer these craft. There's a major debate going on now, and this is one of the things that Luis Elizondo was attempting to get to the bottom of, is what is the state of present efforts to back engineer these craft that have been captured now. In fact, it's one of the provisions of the new law that I've talked about, which is the National Intelligence Authorization Act that was passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023 on December 23rd. Is it directly commands the United States Defense Department and intelligence agencies to turn over to the Senate Intelligence Committee and House Intelligence Committee any information they have whatsoever about efforts that have been made to capture and to back engineer any of the technology having to do with the UFOs. Is quite specific. And so that we're on the brink now of having this information turned over to the United States Senate Intelligence Committee. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in the UFO C3 is to find out what it is that they're being told about this. Now, there are different speculations as to what the level of progress is that's been made. Now, I've talked to a range of people that have got access to this information, and what they've said is that one of the things that's the most difficult for the military people and the private military contractors to figure out about these craft is what it is that's actually propelling them. They don't seem to have any kind of traditional engines. They don't consume energy and expel energy. They don't give off any heat signatures. It's quite clear that whatever the phenomenon is, by means of which these vehicles move from one point to another, is completely unknown still to the military people who have taken these things into their custody and brought them to the private defense contractors such as Lockheed Martin and others to try to figure out how they run. They haven't been able to figure that out yet. And it's quite clear that there's some relationship between how they're navigated, how they determine what point it's going to go from and where it's going to go to. It appears to be involved in a form of telepathy. That they have found helmets inside these craft that are worn by the pilot that appear to direct the craft by telepathy.
Fantastic.
From one place to another. And the field in which they move from point to point appears to have something to do with time travel. It isn't so much that they move linearly from point A to point B, that they move from point A they project themselves in a different point in time to another place. And this is baffling them because our scientists are working linearly from what it is we know at the present time, trying to increase little bits of information that we have from the point of view of what we already know, and we can't quite get there. There's clearly some huge gap between what it is that we know as of now and what it is that the pilots and the intelligence behind these craft know about. And so that people have speculated that, if, for example, there's a particular group of people who speculate that, not only have we captured these, which we have, and recovered them, which we have, but somehow we've been successful in mastering what their propulsion system is and their navigation system is. And what they've then done is they've extrapolated into saying that not only that, but that virtually all, or at least the vast majority of the sightings of UFOs that have been seen in the last 20 years are really United States created knockoffs of these UFOs, and that they're being flown around by United States military personnel, and that they've even gone further in their theories that this is part of some major false flag operation where the United States Defense Department and intelligence community is attempting to frighten the public into believing that we're under assault, under surveillance by an extraterrestrial civilization, and therefore justify some massive increase in the military budget so that they can develop weapon systems and surveillance systems to discover these people. That I don't believe any of that stuff to be true.
You represented the late John Mack, the psychiatrist from Harvard who investigated abductions and cases. I know there's some things you can't say because of the attorney-client privilege, but what did you think of him?
Oh, John was amazing. That John was such a moderate, to even kind of conservative kind of guy. Came from a conservative family, background of doctors, and he was directed to do the examinations of a number of high-level military officials who had been sent to him because they had insisted upon reporting UFO sightings, and they were ordered to go get a psychiatric exam. It was asserted, well, we want you to appear to be credible, so we want to have you get a really professional psychiatric exam so that we can argue that you're completely stable and you're making these arguments. But the reality is that was part of that previous program of deterring anybody from reporting these things. But exactly. when John did the analysis of a number of these high-level military people that had been sent to him, he said to me, I was surprised. I found that these guys were completely within normal parameters of normal psychology of people. He said, and yet they were absolutely certain that they had seen these UFOs and that they were trying to report them, and they were being pushed back, and they were very frustrated about this. And so that was what actually got him interested in this whole subject. And so a friend of his, a friend of the family, actually, was Bud Hopkins. The Hopkins family were friends with the John Mack's family. And so Bud Hopkins said, look, I've got some other people who are very, very credible people over and above, military officials. I got law enforcement officers and librarians.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Bud was a giant. I miss him.
Yeah, that's right. And so John began to go through this process of interviewing these people, and he wasn't hypnotizing them. He never engaged in hypnosis. He used this thing called holotropic breathing, which was Stanislav Grof and his wife had developed this deep breathing. It's almost kind of a form of meditation that enables people to relax and calm down the jittery mind so that they can recall things that they wouldn't normally recall. And he began to start developing an entire pattern of information that these people were talking about. He got so astonished by this whole thing that he actually prepared a professional piece to submit to the New England Journal of Medicine in Massachusetts, and gave it to them to have them to publish this, and they refused to publish it. And so he got upset about this, and he ended up going to a publisher because he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. He had written the definitive psychological study of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
He was a professional psychiatrist. And so he published the book, and then he was dragged in front of a rump faculty committee at Harvard University, and they began to sort of excoriate him for undermining the public reputation of Harvard University. And I represented him in front of that committee, and Arnold Relman, who was the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, who'd refused to publish the article, was actually chairing that committee. And when I confronted him and said, "Oh no, wait a second. What is it you're really trying to do here? Are you is there any likelihood that this committee, whatever your nature is here, is going to be asking questions and want to know about, number one, whether extraterrestrial intelligence exists, and two, whether or not at least some of these sightings of UFOs might actually be vehicles from an extraterrestrial civilization?" And Arnold Relman said to me, he said, "Well, absolutely, we're going to be looking into that, and it's totally ridiculous to think that either one of those things is true." That's what he said. And so I said, "Well, I think that I should tell you, to be candid here, that Dr. Mack and I just spent the weekend with Lawrence Rockefeller, and Mr. Rockefeller has agreed to finance an entire grand rounds here at Harvard University. And we're going to bring witnesses to you, that we got the head of the investigation, the Federal Aviation Agency, we got military officials, we've got, all kinds of people we're going to bring to Harvard University. We're going to put them under oath, and we're going to present the evidence to you." And the lawyer for Harvard University jumped to her feet, and she said, "Absolutely not.
Objection, right?
We're not going to have this procedure turn into some kind of a circus," she said. And so we agreed to put the grand rounds on. They finally gave in, and they left him alone. And John went on to establish this thing called the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research, the peer group. I became legal counsel to the peer group, and I got to meet dozens and dozens of people who have had these rather extraordinary experiences, not only of seeing UFO craft, but having face-to-face encounters with the occupants of the UFO craft.
Amazing. What do you think of these people, Daniel?
Well, they vary, of course, George. I mean, you have some people that are unfortunately kind of emotionally unstable, and they're into kind of fantasizing about this because they want to have some kind of notoriety. There are others that are just flat lying. They're just kind of charlatans, a few of them. But the fact of the matter is a substantial number of them, are absolutely credible people. I've spent 50 years of doing trial law and have interrogated thousands of people, and I know a credible witness when I find one, because I'm in the business of putting them on the stand in front of juries and convincing juries that they're telling the truth. And so I know positively that a number of these people are totally credible. And so what John and I began to do is to gather the information from the most credible of all of these different witnesses. And we were actually in the process of training some of the people through holotropic breathing to calm themselves whenever they began to have one of these experiences. Because as you know, and probably many of the listeners know, people who have these kind of direct contact experiences, face-to-face encounters with extraterrestrial beings from these UFO craft, they actually have a number of these contacts. It's happened repeatedly in their life. And so what we did is we were picking some people and helping to train them So when they realized that one of these encounters was getting set to happen again, they would go through this process of this deep holotropic breathing, calm themselves, center themselves, and so that they would not freak out, and that they would be able to have really calm, centered communication with these extraterrestrial beings. And so we were in the process at that time, John and I, of trying to establish a new paradigm institute that was going to be able to develop a diplomatic corps that was actually going to be able to have ongoing centered conversations with these beings to develop sort of a citizen diplomacy process that was going on. That was just shortly before John was killed in this tragic accident.
Oh, horrible. Stepping off a curb, got hit by a drunk driver, right?
Getting hit, run down by a drunk driver. You know, we investigated. Danny, his son, called me within the hour of finding out about it. We put investigators on it. We found out who the guy was. We got him arrested. You know, there wasn't any doubt about the fact that it was an accident, a stupid accident that happened. But the bottom line is that John and I were involved in this process of trying to handle this in a completely professional and responsible way, just exactly like the UFO 501c3 that we're going to be establishing, this institute. This has to be done totally professionally. A lot of work has been done by citizens groups that we all know, from MUFON to a lot of the other APRO and the other groups that have had for the years, down through the years. What we have to do is consolidate all of this information and set up a process by means of which we deliver this information to the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee and the other members of Congress, so that we can have this to have this process succeed. Because we've now crossed this very, very important line of having the institution of the Congress of the United States demanding to have this information conveyed to them. And we don't want them to be able to say, oh, we didn't get the information from the Defense Department, and so we don't know what to do about that. I've had numbers of cases, as you probably know, where, for example, the Boland Amendment was passed by the United States Congress back in 1984, absolutely prohibiting the intelligence community and defense community from providing any military equipment to Contras down in Central America.
Right.
They just passed the law, but they didn't have any enforcement mechanism. So our institute filed a major federal criminal racketeering complaint against them and brought it to court and prosecuted them and extracted the information from them and got a special prosecutor appointed, Lawrence Walsh, that brought them up in front of Congress, had major hearings to expose what they were doing and stop them from doing that. The same thing was true with the Indian Child Welfare Act. The Congress in 1976 passed the Indian Child Welfare Act, mandating that any social services that took Indian children away from their family had to place them with other Indian families so they could stay within their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was there to enforce it. They just passed the law, and nobody was doing it. So we ended up setting up a whole project up in South Dakota, the Lakota People's Law Project, and went after them and had major hearings and things go on. And so we got contacted by the Justice Department and crafted an entire set of enforcement guidelines, which we were then put into effect by the Justice Department. And so this is the kind of work that we have done down through the last 50 years. And what I want to do is bring that kind of professional expertise to this particular extraordinarily important subject.
So that's a smart way to do it.
For getting this information conveyed in an official format to the United States Intelligence Committee of the Congress, into the House of Representatives and the Senate, make sure we know they know, and then make sure that they follow up on this information and demand that the Defense Department agencies and the intelligence communities turn over the information which they know that they've got relating to these incidents that we have.
Without a watchdog like you, Daniel, it'll never happen. So keep up doing what you're doing.
Well, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to need a lot of help on it. You know, we're going to set up this office down in Los Angeles where we can have lots of the major media to be able to cover this. You know, but you know, we're not going to make any of the kind of mistakes that were made by the To the Stars Academy. You know, this is not engaged in any kind of commercial activity. We're not going to be trying to make any money on this. We're not going to commercialize the access to information. Our job is to be a citizen group that is gathering and communicating this information to the United States Congress and watchdogging the United States Congress to make sure that they're enforcing this law that's been passed, and to watchdog the Defense Department and the intelligence community. And we are uniquely in communication with the Inspector General's office of the Defense Department and the intelligence community so that we can be in communication with them saying, look, you guys are in charge of making sure that they're not violating the law in the intelligence community and in the Defense Department. And you guys have got to do your job. And so we're here to help you do your job as well. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make the instrumentalities of our government work to do what the Constitution requires that they do. And this is to make this information available to our people so we can all participate intelligently and in an informed way in making decisions about what the policies are going to be that are going to govern our relationship with this extraterrestrial civilization that are piloting these UFOs.
Keep fighting, Daniel. Keep fighting. They're lining up to talk to you, so we'll be back in a moment to take calls with Daniel Sheehan on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast. In a moment, Dr. Laurie Perlman joins us to talk about exorcisms and the strange on Coast to Coast, so make sure you're part of the program. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with Daniel Sheehan as we talk about UFOs and what's been going on with the government. Let's go to your calls now. East of the Rockies, Brian in Indianapolis to get us started. Hey, Brian.
Hey, George, how are you?
Wonderful. Thanks. Go ahead.
Awesome. Hey, man, you could fill the whole show up with this topic.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Hey, real quick, because I know you're running long and everything, I'll make this real quick. I was watching Ancient Aliens before I came to work today, having breakfast or supper or whatever. But anyway, Giorgio Tsoukalos and David Childers were talking about the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church way back to thousands of years ago, a couple thousand years ago, and these ancient civilizations, and they would take the oral history or the written history or whatever they could find, and they would destroy it, but because they wanted to control the narrative about the ancient aliens coming down to visiting these civilizations. But they say, they don't know for sure, but they say there's a vault in the Vatican that holds all of these, some of these, not all of them, I guess, records of these ancient civilizations that would prove, of course we all know, but that would prove that these ancient aliens exist. But I'm just what I'm getting at is that how the federal government, our government, and the church, even way back then, church was all powerful back then, held sway over the people, didn't want them to know about that. I just want to know what Daniel thought about that.
Daniel, you aware of that? Thank you, Brian.
Well, okay. Let me say this about I've talked to the people that started the Ancient Aliens series, and a lot of them have quit because they're concerned, because the operative thesis that's going on all the time with the ancient aliens is that, well, some ancient alien thinkers believe the following or suspect the following, and then what they do is they just extrapolate out on some big, long kind of speculation that goes on. I'm one of the few people you'll ever talk to that has sat down and talked with Johann Hicks, who's the head of the archives of the Vatican. That I was legal counsel at the Jesuit headquarters in the United States, and been back and forth to the Vatican and stay at the Doma with Francis when I'm there. And the fact of the matter is, I have no doubt whatsoever that they have information in the Vatican archives about the different information about UFOs. The Jesuits, as you know, serve as primarily the intelligence operation for the Vatican, and so I know that I was trying to get at this information, as I talked about at the top of the show back in 1977, to be able to provide to the study that we were doing for President Carter, and I was not allowed to have it at that point. But I've gone after the Vatican issued his statement that I referred to on November 11th of 2009. I flew directly to talk with Father Jose Gabriel Funes, who was the director of the Vatican Observatory.
Did you ever talk to Balducci when he was alive?
No, Balducci was not at a very high level at all.
Okay.
He was Monsignor. He was interested in the subject, but he wasn't ever in any kind of official position. That Jose Gabriel Funes was not only the director of the Pontifical Observatory, but he was the guy that was designated by Pope actually Benedict had him issue this public statement from the Vatican press office saying that the time has now arrived for citizens to start having this conversation, because we've now, much sooner than we had anticipated, going to be discovering life elsewhere in the universe, and that I flew and had a direct meeting face-to-face with Jose Gabriel Funes, and within 2 minutes he said, look, we're not talking about the discovery of some single-cell life form under some frozen sea on some distant moon somewhere. We're talking about another highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but categorically non-human species right here in our Milky Way galaxy. That's what he said to me. So, I mean, I know that
that's fantastic.
I know that this is known, and we're working at. I've been trying to get them to release this information, and I believe that in light of the fact that the United States Congress is extracting this information from the intelligence communities and from the Defense Department, that we now have a renewed chance. I'm going to be going back to Rome to meet with Johann X, who's the head of the archives, and renew our request. If I can, through our UFO C3, the new 501c3 office that we're setting up, if I can establish an adequate ongoing relationship with the Senate Intelligence Committee and providing information to them and being able to get information from them that they believe is appropriate for being released to the public, that can help lever my opportunity to go back and meet with Johann X and get him to start transferring some of this information through us to the Senate Intelligence Committee. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to do that in the near future to find out exactly what it is they do know. But the speculation, aimless speculation on the part of the people that write the Ancient Aliens, projecting this whole theory that they've been crushing and destroying this information, et cetera, is speculation without any evidence that they have for it. But I'm in the business now of running this new C3 that is going to be gathering the evidence, the concrete evidence and proof. We're not going to be basing it on some ancient alien speculators think the following. We're going to be saying, here's what the evidence is, and we're going to be presenting it in a professional, legal way to the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee and get this information made available to the people.
West of the Rockies, Joel's with us, Montana. Hi, Joel.
Hi.
Good to have you with us. Go ahead, sir.
Don't believe in those UFOs. I'll tell you what, it's against. You said the Catholic Church would accept UFOs. You've got some information on Jesuits that there are UFOs, that there are real UFOs, and the Catechism of the Catholic Church directly says it is not so. It is wrong to believe in these aliens.
Well, they changed that, Joel. Did they not, Daniel?
No, it doesn't say any such thing, Joel. I don't know where you're getting that from, but it doesn't say such thing. There's not a single line in the catechisms anywhere that says that it's not appropriate for believing in UFOs. That's just aimless, speculation on people's part. It's just not true. I mean, the fact of the matter is that this is an extraordinarily sophisticated conversation that's been going on inside the Catholic Church for 100 years, trying to figure out what to do about the UFO phenomenon. But they've never taken any public position that one can't believe in it. So that's just flat not true.
Next up, we go to Todd, Bellevue, Washington. Hello there, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Danheiser, Mr. Norrie, Mr. Sheehan. Now, Queensryche did a song in 1986 written by Chris DeGarmo called Nuit Regal off the Rage for Order album, and it's about an alien landing, and I would like to ask you, Mr. Sheehan, now, I've been a great fan of your JFK lecture series on YouTube, and I understand you teach a community college course on the assassination now. How do you feel about the triangulation theory that Mr. Khrushchev and Marilyn Monroe and all that pillow talk kind of stuff could have led to Mr. Kennedy's assassination?
Okay, well, it's number one, it's not a community college. It's the University of California, Santa Cruz, where I teach. And the fact is that, again, none of that is true. I mean, I have a very clear, detailed understanding of what had happened in the assassination. I happen to have been in the office of F.D. Bailey as one of their 3 trial lawyers when we were representing James McCord in the Watergate burglary. And the Watergate burglary was all directly connected to the Kennedy assassination. And we interviewed Trafficante, who's the one who put together.
It was a mob hit, wasn't it, Daniel?
Yeah. It was not. They put together a team to assassinate Fidel Castro, and this particular team that was made up of people like Rafael Chichi Quintero, Ricardo Chavez, Rolando Martinez, and others, the liaisons of whom were E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. That team is the one that, in fact, killed the president. The question that arises is who greenlighted that? We know who did it. We know Roger Morales is the guy that shot him from the knoll. We know who the people are because we talked directly to Trafficante, who put the team together. As I said, the team was designed to kill Fidel Castro and Raul Castro and Che Guevara. They happen to have had the capacity to function independently, but they killed him primarily because he was having conversations with Khrushchev. 18 letters that he exchanged secretly with Khrushchev after the Cuban Missile Crisis of October of 1962. They were so traumatized by how close we came to having total thermonuclear annihilation that the two of them were working together through this secret passage of letters to each other. They were carried by Norman Cousins, who was the conveyor of the letters, to try to use their executive power to start disassembling the nuclear warheads of our 2 arsenals, to try to use their executive authority that they had to do this. And that was absolutely, anathema.
Was that the motivation, you think?
Yes, I'm convinced it was.
Interesting.
And Dulles, it was not Dulles' capacity as the previously fired CIA head that led this whole thing. It was because he was legal counsel for Brown Brothers Harriman. He was, in fact, legal counsel for this group of some 50 super wealthy, powerful, extremely reactionary robber baron type guys. The CEO of which was George Herbert Walker, who was the maternal grandfather for George Herbert Walker Jr. George Herbert Walker Bush. This is the group that killed the president. They greenlighted the president because they had developed the nuclear weapons, as Khrushchev, as Gorbachev said to us in face-to-face conversations. I was legal counsel for the Gorbachev Foundation's State of the World Forum, where we had all the presidents, vice presidents, secretaries of state come together to talk about these things. And I know from talking directly to Gorbachev that they believe that the United States, this element in the United States, the national security state, the deep state, the shadow government people, that they believe they have to have thermonuclear weapons to combat China, not the Soviet Union, but China, because China can put 1 billion men, uniformed men, in the field, as they demonstrated in Korea that they could do. At Incheon, they could show that they did that. So what I'm saying is that it's not Marilyn Monroe or pillow talk or any of that kind of stuff. None of that has anything to do with this. This has to do with a deep state conspiracy. The consigliere for whom was Alan Dulles.
We got to get you back in November, Daniel, for this one with Mark Shaw. Let's take a few more calls before we're done here. Lee in Alabama. Go ahead, Lee.
George, I wanted to ask your guest if he knew anything about the UFO that allegedly crashed in South America in 1996, and a couple of the occupants were captured and died, and supposedly the U.S. gathered up the aircraft.
All right. Do you know about that case, Daniel?
Oh, yes. No, the United States Central Intelligence Agency and the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and others have been ubiquitous, basically, in any areas other than China and the Soviet Union, wherever one of these vehicles has crashed, of dispatching a team to go there and recover this equipment. This event that took place down in '96 is one of those incidents. That there have been a number of them in South America at different times that have occurred, where the United States has seized the equipment. I know of another one that happened in Ecuador, where they moved in and seized the evidence of a major underground base that they had there. that these are the kind of things that we have to be extremely professional about, of gathering the evidence, gathering the witnesses, putting this stuff together, and communicating it to the Intelligence Committee, that we've got to do this. Now, a lot of people with totally good faith reasons say, wait a second, what good does it do just to tell the Intelligence Committee of the Congress? That isn't necessarily getting the information out to the American public right away. I agree. I understand that. But this is the next step that needs to be taken. We need to extract this information about these events down in South America that you've raised here, Lee, and other specific instances, bring the witnesses who are still alive and be able to present them to the Intelligence Committee, and then they can turn around and say, okay, here is a particular incident that occurred. Here are the witnesses that we've gotten and talked to these people, and we are now demanding that the Defense Department tell us who the military unit was that was dispatched to go get that vehicle, where the vehicle is now, where it was taken to at the time, how many people have worked on this vehicle, what state of development have you had in doing the research on the vehicle, et cetera. These are the concrete things that I've conducted these types of investigations now for 50 years.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, Daniel. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you at Conscious Life in Feb. We'll talk about that as we get closer to that time period. Daniel Sheehan with us, website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Up next, we're going to talk about exorcisms on Coast to Coast. Up next, Dr. Laurie Perlman joins us. We're going to be talking about the history of exorcisms, dark energies, and how to avoid future assaults. Next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Dr. Laurie Perlman back with us after, 10 years. Clinical psychologist, author, film producer. She is known for her practices as a spiritual psychologist. She was intrigued by the concept of life after death from an early age after reading a magazine interview with the late Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a pioneer in near-death studies. She is the founder and CEO of the digital treatment tech company Here Global. Laurie Ann, welcome back to the program.
George, it's been too long, and I missed you.
10 years.
I know, but we both look great.
Well, that's good, especially you. That's the important thing, Doc. How you been?
I'm good. I'm glad to be on this show. It's good to hear your voice, and I'm here to give you a good show.
All right. Well, we got lots to talk about. We'll take calls with you next hour as well. How did you get interested in exorcisms?
The early childhood of me, I grew up in a home of mental illness, and I stayed a lot in my room, and my best friend was what I called God, a universal source that talked to me. And God said that I was a messenger. I took it seriously. I was really little, and I knew that there were energy fields in my home that I was battling, that there were dark swirls, almost like barnacles that attach parasitic, freeloading energies that are not seen. Yes, disincarnate, as people die and don't go to the light, but also interdimensional energies that attach themselves to people that are compromised, i.e., my parents, alcoholic. Yes. The exorcisms came when I saw that I could manipulate that energy as a young child, that there are laws of the universe, that nothing can have power over you, nothing. So in my room, I would work with those energies. And the way that I found to work with them is actually to honor them, that they come to be an evolutionary catalyst.
Laurie, give us your definition of an exorcism.
An exorcism over, since the beginning of recorded time has been either a sacrifice to neutralize or expel, or a prayer or a ceremony to expel unwanted demons, entities, spells, curses, saboteurs. But in my lingo, they're all bunched together as what we would call unwanted. Think of the Lord's Prayer, deliver me from evil. This is a predominant theme throughout recorded history. But I don't think that we serve ourselves well by casting it out and off in a I count, you don't way. That they are actually here, living among us, that we are not sovereign in an infinite way. We are a plurality. We operate on many dimensions, even though we agree that we're here tonight at midnight on a three-dimensional level. These energies also work interdimensionally, but their frequency is low. They attach to fear, to low-level acts like denigration and desecration. They attach to our unwanted thoughts. So let me give you an example. Like you're at the kitchen table chopping vegetables for dinner, and you're all of a sudden everything's fine. The radio's on. You're kind of swinging your hips, and a waft of dark energy kind of takes you over. It feels oppressive, like it could grab your throat. It could lie on your chest. It could turn your stomach into a knot. And you go, what happened? And then you realize that the thought you were having right before that waft of bad energy was remembering the guy who cut you off on the road and how you almost got in a car accident, and you're kind of putting him down, and you're in a denigration kind of mode. That frequency attaches to your frequency. You've got to be careful what we think, what we do. It has to be in alignment and in accord with our understanding of what our morality is, not scripture, but what is your truth to you. That's the litmus test.
These demon saboteurs, as you call them, what are they?
Energies, interdimensional energies that can assault us if we're in a matched frequency. So let's say, in my case, my parents were alcoholic. So if you're around addicts, if you're around people that go to bars, Bowery, it doesn't mean that all people that go to bars need an exorcism.
No, of course not.
That no, absolutely not. We know about Brentwood. Anyway, the point is that when you go to in the company of, or you are suffering and you are compromised at a soul level or an emotional level, or you are being abused, you are susceptible to matching the frequencies of these energies, their waves, particles, force fields. They have an ability for you to actually work with them. So even though it's long-standing, it can go from generation to generation in your DNA, or it can go generation to generation through your spirit, or it can go from lifetime to lifetime. So let's say you were burned at the stake for being a witch. You have now, in this modern lifetime, a fear of speaking your truth and going and doing public speaking. That unfortunate curse has stayed with you through lifetimes until we can break them. And that's where I come in, that when I studied psychotherapy to be a doctor, it was really with an alternative agenda to deal with spiritual cleanup, because an intervention psychologically and biophysically and neuroscientifically alone is not enough, that there's a whole other world of life in life that needs to be gotten. And those are enduring. So, George, you remember when I was on 10 years ago, I had this center with 65 doctors and healers from all over the world. We used every kind of imagination to give an intervention because we would customize it. So everybody's unique in the way that they formulate their belief system on how they get through the darkest times or how they pull themselves out of the mud. This is very important, that we want to address that everyone is so unique. Their way of pulling themselves out of the muck and mire is also unique. And what attaches to them is unique. So it goes generation to generation. It goes lifetimes. Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker, the University of Virginia, Jim Tucker's still around. He studied reincarnation in a lot of children that were vetted 80, 90% of what their last lifetime was. And he saw criteria that followed you. Like if you were hung, you tended in the new lifetime to have a birthmark around your neck. You had likes and dislikes that followed you. And you also had lifetime of difficulties that would be in your kind of matrix that need to be cleaned out. So when we work with somebody, you work with them not just in a psychosocial way, but you work with them in a spiritual way to go through all of not just the family patterning and the unspoken messages in the home and all the difficulties and the traumas that they had to deal with, but you look at their past lives. You look at what they've got attached to them now. It's like a barnacle, freeloading parasitic energies that affect our thinking, that affect our emotions, that affect our physicality, disease.
Now, these demons, these saboteurs, what do they want?
They feed off of and express through the frequencies that they attach to. So let's go with the good news. Here's the good news. Much like when you go to an experience of a group like a concert or a sporting event, and the energy, the frequency is really high.
Mm-hmm.
It's communal. Right. It's gorgeous. Or you get the chills, like you're in a moment of reverie and you feel like you're getting a punctuation from on high. When you get the chills, you'll be talking about your mother who's deceased, and you know that there's a level of her that's loving you in that moment. She's coming and kissing you in an electromagnetic way. Those good frequencies, those good energies, waves, particles, but they come to give us uplift, and they come to give us goodness and punctuation, to guide us, to connect us, to direct us. The negative frequencies, which I'm going to say are not really negative, it's like a negative ion and a positive ion, they come to give us an evolutionary uptick. They come to be a catalyst. And where we're going in this new earth is that we're lifting the veils that we're not alone. We're lifting the veils that is much that lives among us, and that there is much that interconnects with us in a symbiotic way. And that if we deal with them in a loving, respectful, hearing them out, talking to them, attuning to them, which means really attuning to yourself. Like, why did my stomach get tight? And not taking it at face value that tightness really belongs to you. It's definitely saying, okay, what was my thought? Yes, I wanted to wish that guy equal amount of a cutoff so he could know what it's like to face his death. But in a way, it doesn't really belong to you. It's this extra added energetic field that you can say bye-bye. No person, no place, no circumstance will ever have power over me. There are laws in the universe that if you deal with it in a loving way, it has to go.
Are these parasitic entities like psychic vampires, Laurie?
There are psychic vampires that will attach to somebody who's a compromised host. So, for instance, a man that I knew, his sister was in a institution. She did not get to live out a full life. She was abused in this institution and was, we don't know, but she died at 16.
16?
16. He was in a compromised state, her younger brother. He was in a compromised state. He was not in alignment with his morality or his gifts in his mission. He was not living his life as he was supposed to. He was in a depressed state, and he was not living his life in his truth. She entered as a walk-in. These parasitic vampires are sometimes walk-ins. They are disincarnates that have not gone to the light. They feel that they have not fulfilled their life here in the earth realm, which is a gift. And so they did not go to the light, and they walked into him. She walked into him and took him over. We had to work with him to get her to go. There are many like this. A man was working in a bullpen situation, a woman across the way. She died unexpectedly. She was young. She didn't have children. His little 2-year-old was running down the hallway to the mom, and the little 2-year-old would stop dead, even though the mom's arms are open and the mom is saying, come, and the little 2-year-old would do 2 steps to the right, 2 steps to the left, and it was as though someone was blocking the 2-year-old to get to the mom. And it turns out that this woman had followed him home. She had never known what life was like as a married person. She'd never known what it was like to have children. So what we do, and what you can all do, is you talk to this energy and you say, it's time for you to leave. This is my house. So this kind of parasitic energy gets attached to a person, a location, an object. Most likely the object is being pushed off a shelf by a disincarnate or a parasitic freeloading energy. But some of these energies are good. They're not all bad.
How can we distinguish the difference?
The way you feel. And what I believe this new earth is about is accepting that we are far more than a 3-dimensional straight line. We are living a multidimensional life, and that this is a given, that you're in a symbiotic system with that which declares itself an evolutionary catalyst, which could express itself as negative, but it makes you stand into your power. So the ultimate lesson in all of this is that you walk through your life in your power. Nothing will have any power over you, no person, no place, no circumstance, that you follow your truth, that you work in your uniqueness. You do not care what anyone thinks of you. You do not care what anyone thinks of you. You show up in a state of joy, and it takes work, George, to show up in joy. That frequency is not easy. You have to shift. So if you feel taken over by a wave of darkness, you can see that your thoughts are spiraling into a looping or a perseverating of I'm no good, or I don't have enough money, or I'm not doing good enough. You shift the energy, and you go and you sit there, depending on who you are, whether you're physical or visual or auditory. If you're auditory, put music on. Start dancing. If you're physical, go walk the beach. If you're visual, go imagine every part of your body and what it's done for you. These are the feet that have walked my child hours on end to stop their colic. These are the arms that have held them tight. These are the lips that have kissed them. Start loving yourself and raise the frequency to a love frequency. Joy, love, service, gratitude. Those are high frequency.
Are you noticing, Laurie, that people have been getting strangely whacked out lately? They're doing strange things. I mean, the robberies are at an all-time high. Car thefts are high. Shootings are high. I mean, something's going on. It can't be just the old lock-ins from COVID that we had a few years ago. Something's happening. Are you noticing that?
Yes. I was going to say, if I had to diagnose the world right now, I don't think it's just us. It's around the world. It would be Stockholm Syndrome. That Stockholm Syndrome is the acceptance and the tolerance of abuse. I don't want to say that this is a catch-all, that these energies that are coming and assaulting us are the only reason why we have an uptick in crime, mental illness, medications, toxins, inability to eat clean food. And something happened when we were working with the atomic bomb. Something happened when we were working with the atomic bomb that we ended up severely compromising ourselves to a state. Man's inhumanity to man has always existed. But we started self-destructing our body, our food source, our water source. We went way further than we've ever gone before, which is why, given your last guest and your proclivity to UFOs, which is why I think we got visited a great amount. We got known that we were being visited more. I think that we've always been visited around Roswell, around the testing, that we were needing an uptick in evolution, that the consciousness that creates the problem cannot always be the consciousness that solves it, said Einstein, that we needed us from the future or us from another dimension, because we're all one, even though we have sovereignty and a signature of our, George's mission is different than Laurie's mission, but we're all one. So why did we get a knowing that we were being visited then, which was that we were going to go into this new earth, which is that we are going to stop living in polarity and go into unity. But it's not that night will not have day and dark, will not have light. We're going to still be binary. It's the perception of us being in unity together and one and lifting the veils of what separates us, that we are all going to be in awareness of that which lives amongst us, and we are going to be in awareness of our plurality. I think it's getting darker before the dawn, that there will be a separation in who will join in the idea that goodness is coming in a bigger way because we're going to
we're gonna need it, Laurie, to be sure. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back with Dr. Laurie and Perlman in a moment. Welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, along with Dr. Laurie Ann Perlman. Her websites are linked up at coasttocoastam.com. She does have a book, too, called God, the Universe, and Where I Fit In. Laurie, why do some exorcisms work and some others do not?
Good question. So it depends on the host and depends on the amount of velocity that one gives the exorcism. So this is something that's been done across cultures since the beginning of time, whether it was a witch doctor shaking a stick with like an EMDR.
Yep, or a shaman or something like that.
Right, or Sufi, the whirling dervishes in Africa, the dancing, the drums to get the demons out. It depends on the host. It depends on the energetic inside, because I want to say that sometimes it's consciousness of a human that's dropped its body. Sometimes it's waves, particles, force fields. It's electromagnetic. It depends on, the amount. It's severity, and you had said to me earlier in the show, what do they want? Well, it's much like at the micro and the macro, domination, fuel. They have different energies, negative energies have different fuel. They show and display themselves with different expression, whether it's chaos or domination or, manipulation. So it depends on the host, and it depends on what you as a soul have signed up to grow to be. So it doesn't come just out of nowhere. These are long-standing energetics that have been around humanity and a part of humanity, even probably before humanity. Part of the earth, it's part of the way that we're constructed. So if plants have been around 3.5 million years before us, these energies have been around. And it's not uncommon for us to think about, I think it's first awareness, am I possessed? Do I have a spell, a curse? So in my early life, George, you remember this, but the audience doesn't. I was one of the first female agents at CAA. I represented Michael Jackson. I represented Madonna. I watched the way young, huge talent implodes based on the energetics of where 40,000 people in this stadium clapping for you, little kids of all ages around the world having your poster on their wall, whether or not you're cheered for or you're booed for, like Simone Biles. The Wigleys was not anything that she couldn't get over. It was energetic that this is my guess, I didn't evaluate her, but that her confidence got so shook, and that in that moment, because she was in a stadium where there were a lot of countries that didn't want her to win. So they're dispelling a lot of negative energy toward her, rooting against her. And if you're not super strong and spiritually got a wall, you're going to be susceptible as an empath or as a sensitive one. And you've got to really work hard on spiritually really scrubbing and doing an internal assessment, doing an inventory. How do I feel right now? And so she had to get that out of her head So some of them work and some of them don't, but it's also the host and how to get them strong. We had a lot of success at Moonview, which was, I founded that institute, with actually drug-induced schizophrenia. That these barnacles, these negative low-frequency energies attach, give you a psychotic break, not only give you, there's obviously a whole stew of psychological, emotional, and physical, but there is an energetic. And that's why I'm on the show, is to say to people, and look at the website, there's a tool. I authored an app, which is a meditation app, but it's a game. And you do it much like you would Tetris. It is a game that gets you from the lower trauma monkey brain, a fight, flight, freeze, to the high brain, the parietal lobe, which is where nuns and monks reside while they're meditating, from 3 minutes to an hour, depending upon how difficult a upset in your internal system. And you can play the game. It's free. It's being used around the world. The UN, Dignity Health, Sloan Kettering. It's free. It's a peace initiative that I started because at the center I saw how many people are suffering. The label that we give it in the psychological field is trauma, PTSD, Stockholm Syndrome. But what I really believe, it's also a spiritual crisis that we are coming through to get to the other side, which is the awareness that we are not alone and that we have to operate with that.
What's the name of your app?
It's called Here Global Foundation. The link is on your website, and also a Calendly invite if you want to have a session with me. Because sometimes it's really hard to do this alone. It's hard to know, what am I suffering from? Why is this happening? And because each human being is individual, the energetics that get attached are also individual to you. They fuel, they mirror, and they attach. I wanted just to say about Madonna, she taught me a lot because when I went into her trailer, this was right before the Like a Virgin tour. She was shooting Desperately Seeking Susan. I said to her, what do you want from your career? And she didn't say, I want to be the world's greatest rock star. She said, I want to break down taboos. At the time, I did not know her brother was gay. She wanted to break down sexual taboos, and that's a spiritual mission. And when you have a mission that's greater than your own ego, whether you agree with her or not, she had a mission that was bigger than her own ego. She was able, up there with Elvis, the Beatles, to be able to absorb all of that financial energetic, the amount of energy that the world was giving her, and not implode like Michael. Michael was not in alignment with his truth. There was that whole part of him, same with Whitney Houston, there was that whole part of him that wanted to heal the world. Look at all of his songs that he wrote. But then there was the part of him that couldn't really be truthful. And when one is not in alignment with their truth, whatever that truth may be, they have a susceptibility to attaching more negativity to them.
Did he have demons, Laurie?
My assumption, because at that point I was not a psychologist, is of course. The father, it's public knowledge. The father was horrific to the kids and deprived him of a childhood. To get a little 3-year-old to sing, what has to happen for a 3-year-old to get on stage? We all know what a 3-year-old is like.
But at the same time, the father did help his career, didn't he?
The father was instrumental in making all of those kids extremely successful. However, the father was, had his own demons. Whatever motivates somebody to, I really shouldn't. I was not the therapist at that time. I had to deal with the father, and the father was a difficult customer.
Michael was a great talent, though, wasn't he?
Unbelievable talent with a beautiful heart, who got deprived of a childhood, who was most likely horribly abused, and did the best he could. And we are the beneficiaries of enormous amounts of goodness. And that is a gift that nobody can deny. And that's the other piece of this. When you have the guts and the gumption to live your truth, you can never judge another human being.
What led you, though, Laurie, to become a psychologist?
As I said earlier, when I had this intuition, I could read energies. I knew that there was something below, lifting up the veils. I wanted to explore. I went, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who you talked about earlier, she was, really brought through the life after life, being bedside to cancer patients who were dying and calling out to loved ones who had died. So we knew then she was reviving the idea that Indigenous people knew that we are escorted to the next realm by our loved ones. Then I studied with Ken Ring, who studied people who flatlined, and we began to believe and know that we have schools that we go to after we die. We have life review. We begin to understand the ripple effect of our life, and we begin to go to another school for self-love. And most of these near-death experiences, when they're sent back, they're told you haven't finished learning to both give and receive love, that this earth school is a school to learn how to give and receive love. So that's why I was saying to you, the frequency of love and self-love will trump any frequency of fear-based, parasitic freeloading. You can transmute it, and you can even invite it to go into another expression itself. That I believe that this new earth that we talk about is the beginning of us inviting in that which we don't want to exist with in the same way. We are not hostages to that abuse. We are now inviting it to exhaust its need to operate that way and inviting it to expand with us. So when one goes into an expansion, it's as though you were working as a 5-piece combo, and you're now inviting the totality of you to show up, inviting the whole orchestra to show up. So when we walk into our power, we're walking in with the whole orchestra that we might have not been aware of before.
Laurie, before the break, we were talking about how strange people have been acting over the last couple of years, and the break got us before you really had a chance to finish. But, it's a bad situation.
Sometimes the darkest night is before the dawn, and my feeling as an optimist and having the success I've had in working with the dark, that I believe that the dark has exhausted its need to express itself, and that we are going into a world now of dominion, not domination. That what has been manipulation and domination is going into dominion, that we are going to step up as humanity and say nothing will have power over us anymore and begin to work with it in a loving way. I know that it's been crazy, George. You're 100% correct. But sometimes that which has been cycling, much like trauma, it needs to get transmuted before it can start living a new expression. It's also why, at a spiritual level, why COVID, took so many lives, why things are happening while there's wars. It's not that man's inhumanity and epidemics haven't happened before, but there is this cry for a new expression. And we go into evolution always, we're always in evolution. So I'm an optimist that says this is the dark before the dawn. It's kind of that scene in Network where I'm mad as hell and I'm not
going to take it anymore. Well, Laurie, let me ask you this. How do good people who are well-intentioned fight off any of these demonic assaults?
You are going to live in your power, your truth. You're going to self-consult and say, what is my moment of truth? In that moment, if you don't feel right, let's say you get a uneasy feeling in your stomach, a tightness around your throat, a twitch in your eye. Sometimes an entity will cause one eyelid to droop. You have to know the signs, too. You will feel an oppressive blanket or have an incubus, that feeling of, when you wake up in the middle of the night and it's uneasy. You have to do a lot of cleaning and say, what is my truth? Sit there, journal or dance or sing, flip your energy and start talking to that piece spiritually of your negative and bring it into the light and know it, see what it stands for, what fuels it, what it calls itself, and then ask it to go or to live with somebody else or send back to sender. I try not to return to sender, although that is a intervention, because then we're just, it's like the cat in the hat. The stain goes from the dress to the wall to the dog. It's just trauma that's not transmuted gets transferred. Same with dark energies. Work with them, transmute them, and don't transfer them on.
We're going to take calls next hour with Dr. Laurie Perlman. And if you want to share your experiences, maybe you've come across somebody who has been possessed or acting weird, share that story with us, too. And she can do a little quick analysis on something like that. But you do believe we're going to win in the long run. I like that.
I do.
That's the important thing. Can people email you through your website?
Yes, it's Laurie at hereglobalrelief.org. Laurie, Laurie, at hereglobalrelief.org.
And here is HERE, as opposed to here through the year.
Yeah, that it all starts here. It starts with you here.
Well, Laurie, keep doing what you're doing. We'll come back in a moment and take calls. And the tense times, they're strange times right now. I mean, you can see it all over the place. Just look at your local newscasts wherever you are. There's crime all over the place. I mean, it's rampant. It's unbelievable, Laurie.
Journalism and science, and, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean, fear sells. So we have to really be careful and not foment, the dark.
That's true, but it's real. We're going to come back and take calls. This hour, you're part of the program. We're going to take calls with Dr. Laurie Ann Perlman as we talk about demons, exorcisms, and just the strange case of society these days when we come back. Laurie, you've talked in the past about a Noah's Ark moment. What does that mean for you?
Noah's Ark moment, it's kind of what we were saying before about why is it getting so crazy, that this is a moment in time where people will choose whether they want to live in a higher frequency of goodness and love and light, or whether they're going to succumb to a darker, more, negative frequency. And I'm trying not to be judgmental because they both coexist for a reason. They're all part of the totality of isness. But Noah's Ark moment means this is a time to decide. Who are you and what do you want to live and what is your purpose? The darker energies are trickster energies. They're here to rattle us, to make it chaotic, to derail, to undermine, to destabilize, to make you think you're less than and that you live in lack. The higher frequency energies are here to support you. When I teach, when you meditate and you access your highest self is never judgmental or negative. It's always supportive, that you are love, no matter how you're expressing. You are love. Even that which doesn't, things that you've done that you're not proud of. In these researches of, research interviews that I've done with people who have near-death experiences, one of the first schools that they go through is life review, when you have a full-blown near-death experience. So this guy, Tom, who I interviewed, he's under the truck. The air pocket collapses. His corporal body is pinned under the truck, but he feels completely intact as he goes toward the light. As he's going toward the light, he is going through a full-blown life review where he sees himself, even though he's 40 at the time of the truck accident, he's now stop action at 18, learning about the hair trigger temper that he had, where he had to stop short at a red light, and a guy comes out from a bar and he almost hits him and he flips him off, and the old guy from the bar says, "I'll frickin' fight you," and they have a big brawl, and the 18-year-old Tom peels off. And in life review, he relives it, not just as himself at 18, realizing that he had a hair trigger temper and he didn't know whether he really hurt the guy and he just peeled off and put a governor from that moment on. on his emotion, but he also became the 56-year-old man whose wife had died, who was drinking every night, being bested by this 18-year-old punk, saying, oh, my God, I got to get back to the land of the living. So what Life Review does is it shows you from almost a divine Rashomon of the mutuality of exchange in every situation. So even if you are a dark character, even if you get caught up with dark characters, there's a piece of you that's needing to learn and grow and use them as an evolutionary catalyst. It's kind of what Freud says as the repetition compulsion. You can't get down on yourself that you're still, undeniably attracted to the rebel outlaw guy or the dark, whatever it is, whatever your dark attraction is, don't get down on yourself. Look at it as a moment of learning and see what it is that you still haven't gotten from it. Because typically we're wanting to master it. We're wanting to victor over it. We don't want to take it from lifetime to lifetime.
Let's take calls now, Laurie. You ready?
Yep.
We'll start with Joe in the state of Maryland. Welcome to the program. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Mr. George. Hi, Miss Laurie. How you doing?
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, if you're going to, do an exorcism or if you want to expel spirits from your home, what you do is you have the person in a room that's possessed, or you have to carry the vaporizer with you. You get a vaporizer. You have oil and water blessed by the priest, and you put in the vaporizer. And then you put some of the Vicks stuff in there to, throw off the subject who you're exorcising. And demons can't stand holy water, and they can't stand holy oil. So if you're spraying that in a room and there's no reaction, they don't have a demon inside of them. And like I said, they don't know because you put the vaporizer and you say, well, one of the people in here are sick and they're spraying the vaporizer to help them breathe.
Interesting. What do you think of that, Laurie?
I think that he's spot on for those who believe in Catholicism. However, there are those people that still have a demon that don't follow the law of Catholicism that can still get an exorcism. So this is spot on, and this is the important thing, is that you have to honor the host's belief system. And in honoring the host's belief system, you get further along, which doesn't mean, Joe, I believe in everything you've said. Most exorcisms are along with prayer. You're honoring the spirituality of the interdimensionality, and you have to ask it to go. And in the name of Jesus Christ, you are demanded to go right now. And you have to say it from your solar plexus and really mean it, and it goes. But the problem is the adventure is that there are other people that can take benefit of an exorcism that don't necessarily subscribe to Catholicism.
Joe, Long Island, New York. Hey, Joe, go ahead.
I have a second question at this time, but my first question would be, all right, if I have a little bit of a monkey brain aspect, all right, that would be number one. Number two, there's entities floating around that are affecting me, and I'm not sure how they're doing that. And on top of it, there's nuclear fallout from the testing that might be poisoning. How do you amalgamate this and be a little bit more flexible about things maybe as you deal with this?
Well, interesting. So you've got a cluster, unfortunately, of entities, a nuclear fallout, and a mucky brain.
He's got everything going wrong with him.
but he's calling. So, Joe from Long Island, you're doing it right. You're honestly opening up to being vulnerable to getting help. So the mucky brain could be the entities, or it could be, a host of another kind. You're hosting something else. Each one needs to be taken individually and being looked at very particularly to what your symptomology is and what's going on, and honoring. And what I would do is I would get you into a very calm state as much as you can get into still point, really scan you, get permission to go energetically into your body and see what's going on for you and try to help you through it. You can do that for yourself by getting into please go use the app, download it from the website, get yourself into a still point state by using the app, and then start to inquire at the highest states of love, like whatever divine is to you. Go into that divine state and then start asking questions. What is the nuclear fallout? What is the entity? What is my mucky brain about? And start having a conversation with your highest self or God, whatever you call it.
Let's go to first-time caller Monica in Richmond, Virginia. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Mr. George. Hi, Dr. Perlman. How are you?
Good.
Good, Monica.
I have been listening to the whole program, and perhaps I've missed it, but I want to know, how do you decide what's going on with you? Is it a demon? Is it negative energy? Is it some attachment, a curse? How do you know? My luck is absolutely horrible and has been for years, although I know that you said that a lot of it depends on what kind of energy you're around, which unfortunately lots of addicts and thieves and liars. I've been surrounded by them for probably the last 10 years, and I cannot shake the bad luck.
Yeah, it's very important to really get control of the surrounding that you're in, particularly if you're around addicts and thieves and liars, because they are hosting that kind of energy in a greater magnitude. And so it's hard for you to clean off, I understand that. And especially, like, even if you're a nurse or a policeman or a fireman, you're still around it. So it doesn't mean just because you're around bad people, you can get it anywhere. It's really a personal inventory that you need to do. I don't know where you go to get clean, but if it's going to church or going to walk the water or get into a bathtub with Epsom salts and baking soda, there are these stations on any platform called Hertz frequency, capital H, small z. Put Hertz frequency music that are healing energy music on a speaker or your phone, put it on the counter, create a hot bath for yourself so that the phone and the speaker is nowhere near the water. Submerge yourself into the bathtub. Feel into those healing frequencies because your electromagnetic conductivity is higher in water, even though we're water. And start to have a long conversation with yourself about how to extricate yourself from that energetic field. It's not easy, but once you get the hang of it, you can master it.
Let's go to Tom in Massachusetts. Tom, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hi, I have two questions that I'd like to address to you, George, and Dr. Laurie. First, I saw in an interview that Jerry Lee Lewis admitted that he played the devil's music. And I was wondering if music can brainwash you or give you mind control with suggestions and just brainwash you. And
all right, let's get that first. Psychologically, do you think music can affect people, Laurie?
Wow, Tom, that's a big question. Let me take a second to really be quiet and see what I get.
All right, think about that, Laurie, while he comes up with my question. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, and I would like to know if Father Malky Martin was one of the 5 top exorcists in the world, and why he left the priesthood. Was it because of Vatican II or some other reason? And I'd like your opinion also, George.
I think based on what Art used to do with Malachi Martin, he was, I guess, ready to move on. I guess that's the simplest way. I don't know if the Vatican was happy with him. He was very vocal, and they probably moved on. But go ahead with the music question, Laurie.
Yeah, here's what I get intuitively, Tom, and that the soil from which it is created. That music in and of itself is innocent, but the soil from which it's created. So if those who created the music are attempting to undermine God through the music and have a diabolical trajectory, then the music is going to be received that way. If the soil from which creates the music is a high vibration, it is going to be received that way.
Let's go to Cornelius in Louisiana. Hello there, Cornelius.
Hey there, George and Doctor. I tell you, George, that Tom boy, he's something else. I'm talking about Tommy Danhausen, that Tom from Massachusetts. Doctor, I live in what they call the voodoo, hoodoo, and everything land here in Alexandria, Louisiana. And my question for you, and George, you were right. This demonic activity and all like that that's going on. You saw where that 6-year-old shot a teacher.
Yep, it's unbelievable.
Never happened during our lifetime. I'm 62 now. I don't know how old Doc is. But, Doc, we used to do the prayer, the pledge, the Negro National Anthem for African Americans, and then the National Anthem. Of course, in white schools, they did the prayer, the pledge, and the National Anthem. I think because they took God out of the schools and classrooms, I think the devil just stepped right in. Now, I noticed that you hadn't mentioned the devil or Lucifer or any of this. And I do believe Satan has his songs and the Savior has his songs. So my question for you is, now you say we're going to go through a dark period and then light. According to the Bible, that's what's really going to happen. But the devil, this is his world, but God owns all the worlds and everything. But, George, you see what prayer can do? That fella last Monday was dead twice. And because the powerful prayers of Coast to Coast AM, the Global, that young football player, I think his charity now is up to about $10 million. So that's what the power of prayer can do. So God bless you, George and Doc. Y'all take it easy.
Oh, thank you, Cornelius. And your voodoo, hoodoo, Alexandria, Louisiana, I actually feel that there is some truth to what you're saying, is that the family structure, the world has lost sight of source, that we used to in our tribal or indigenous cultures when we were farming primarily, we would understand the power of God. We would understand the cycles and the connection to Mother Earth. And we've lost that. And call it devil, call it Lucifer, call it Satan, that there is this darker frequencies that have taken in effect more of a stronghold, and which is why we need to come back to understanding the spirituality and the love frequencies. It's almost like, look at the predominant world religion is Christianity. On Christmas Day and the days leading up to Christmas and through Christmas, you feel a higher vibratory field in the world. Your heart is open. You feel more buoyant. You feel more generous. You feel more loving. That's that feeling that we want to bottle, is that when everybody agrees to agree that we are going to take a heart-centered approach to living, we will get there.
We'll get there in a big way too, Laurie, won't we?
Yes, especially when we drop our body, right?
Our special guest, Dr. Laurie Ann Perlman. Our websites are linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Let's take a call before the break, and then we will come back with final calls. Let us go to Michael in Colorado. Michael, let's get you in here real quick.
Hi. My God, what she just said, and thank you for taking my call, just blew my mind. That is something that's kind of that's going to be for my question. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I actually am an alcoholic, and I'm fighting alcoholism. I feel that every time I get drunk, the demons do come in. It is so real.
Yep.
And I was just wondering what's your advice to help me with this, because it never stops.
They come in. We've got 40 seconds, Laurie. Go ahead.
Michael, as hard as you can, obviously the good book and the big book and the program, but to not have shame. That the shame and guilt are the lowest frequencies that we can have as a human. Shame is a debilitator. To try really hard after you've had a drink, and obviously you're going to try to minimize your harm to yourself, but please try really hard to go to a place like a church, like an ocean, a lake, somewhere where you can clean out and go to a higher vibratory field and start to feel self-love.
Laurie, we're going to take a quick break and come back with final calls. Michael, fight it as well as you can because it's not easy. Alcohol puts your guard down, and that's when you can get possessed. I think it happens to a lot of people. Final calls next. We'll be back with final calls with Dr. Laurie Perlman in just a moment on Coast to Coast. On our next program, Susan Miller, the astrologer, joins us to talk about what's ahead. And then later on, David Sereda joins us to talk about Tesla technology and some updates on UFOs on Coast to Coast. And welcome back to Coast, our final segment with Laurie Perlman. Your advice to people is very good, Laurie. By the way, thank you for that.
Thank you. I have more. Monica inspired me. I wanted to tell people what I do because I grew up among the dark forces with horrible denigration and desecration, and I had to fight my way out of it. And what I do is I created the app to help people because I use it every morning, and anywhere from 3 minutes to an hour, I will get myself in an alternative state by staring at the orb, and then I will journal, talk to God, and I call in the saints, I call in my ancestors, I call in the archangels and the ascended masters. I sit there and I wait till I hear in my inner voice what God has to tell me, what's mine to do today, what's mine to know that I wouldn't even know to ask, so that you're going beyond your pattern. You're asking God to help expand you beyond what you already know. And I'm journaling. And the frequencies of love, service, and gratitude help get you to God. That there's, according to many religions, the 3 ways to get to that frequency of God is faith, knowledge, or service. So when people say, what do I do? What do I do? You can go be of service in some way, or you can start reading and or, truly just show up in a ritualistic way every morning like I do. And your faith will take you there. It's all the same. It's all to the same end.
All right, let's take final calls for you. Let's go to Elisa first in Portland, Oregon. Hi, Elisa.
Hi, George. Hi, Dr. Laurie.
Hi, Elisa.
This is quite involved. Maybe if you can do with the energy and let me know what I'm dealing here with, if it's a lot more than just obsessed demon. It's been stalking me for about 3 years now, nonstop, 24/7.
You mean humans or spirits?
So she's spirit. I can't see her. I can hear her, and she shows up on my videos, on my recordings, like my surveillance system. She's taken everything I own, all my money, all my clothes, my health. Right now, it's not just I can't live my life. I can't even survive anymore.
Is this a person doing this to you?
No.
It's a spirit.
Yeah, she's followed me through.
Whoa, Laurie, what does she do about this?
Well, Alyssa, can we talk, or did you not finish? Are you finished? Mm-hmm. Can we speak, or are you still talking? I didn't know if you had finished. I know the fact that she shows up on your video surveillance as a, electromagnetic field, most likely. I would call in. This may be bigger than you can do alone. And you go to the local church of your denomination and you ask for assistance from the pastor or the priest or the rabbi, whatever it is that you adhere to. Also, if that's not your comfort, get friends that are, highly evolved to help you and form a group in the house and have a conjuring where you imagine all the archangels surrounding this female spirit and help escort her to heaven. because these demon stalking spirits are usually disincarnate that have not gone to the light. And it is time for them to no longer be in your house. Maybe that spirit lived in the house before you. There's a lot of different combinations. It could be a myriad of things, but it's important for you not to do this alone, because obviously you haven't gotten anywhere. But this spirit needs to go to the light, and the archangels will surround it and escort it. And imagine that and say, demand it from your solar plexus. Scream, you must go now, and be in your conviction, because there are laws. They are not allowed to stay.
Well, I hope that helps you, Lisa. Good luck. It's not easy. It's not easy. What makes a demon go after somebody like that?
Well, as I said, it can get attached to a location, a place, or a person, or an object. It depends on whether this particular demon, that's her word, is specific to that family lineage. So let's say your father was in the moonshine. Long ago, he built an empire on moonshine, and it was.
You're talking about Joe Kennedy, right?
Well, yeah, actually, I was thinking of that. Look at how many sons Rose lost. It's not, there is this family lineage pattern that does follow, the sins of the father. We have to, in a corporation too, I've gone into corporations to clean out the rot, because the beginning of the corporation could have been funded by darker means, and that needs to be neutralized, so that the corporation can stay in an alignment and in a truth to what its product is. So it's not about judging where it came from. It's about getting everything back into alignment and getting the extra difficulty cleaned out. So it's like barnacles, getting it cleaned out so that the person is free to live their truth. The corporation is free to go make a bigger money, bigger eventual stake in the world. This is, it's cleaning up. It's real difficult inventory and scrubbing.
Next up, let's go to John, Kansas City, Missouri. John, go ahead, sir.
Hey, George, thanks for taking my call.
Sure,
Laurie, everything you say is so true. I got exposed to evil as a 6-year-old in 1960. And it was so bad that my parents called in a Franciscan priest who sprinkled holy water over and read, from the prayer book of exorcism-type prayers. And I really had never been told anything about evil or paranoid stuff or anything like that before it occurred to me. And getting to my question, I was told after that the way to keep away from it is to stay in a state of grace, go to the sacraments, go to church, basically, don't do anything wrong, which is pretty tough to do. And these powers are much stronger than any human. And it's hard to do it alone. You got to have the help of God all along. But my question to you is it common for kids to get exposed to extreme evil at a young age?
Yes, unfortunately. What's reported, if we're going to just use trauma as a catch-all, is that 70% of all Americans have had a certain amount of trauma, and that can be in the form of, abuse, emotional, physical, spiritual abuse. It can be in the form of, exposed to all kinds of difficulties in the family. But the catch-all is trauma, and that's what's reported. So we know it's much higher. We know that enormous amounts of families have one or many mentally ill or physically ill or difficulties in the home, financial duress, miscarriages. There's a lot of difficulty that gets transferred even in utero or through the DNA to the child. So even if it's not evil in a traditional way, I had in my clinic days a person who came in with satanic ritual abuse from their parents. It's horrific what's out there. We don't want it, but it does exist. And our acknowledgement of it in a loving, respectful way can get these demon spirits and evil to go. That in the event, because it all exists, we honor it. Not that we want it around. There's a reverence and there's a detachment all at the same time. So in order to be Teflon, like some people have very difficult children that have been exposed to evil. A friend's child, got exposed to, was molested, exposed to evil through an uncle. And as the child got older and had depression and didn't deal with it in a way that she got clean, a dead aunt walked into her body to take her over. In that household, that dead aunt had done demonic ritual abuse. So I don't believe that they are stronger than we are. I believe that it's our job to keep ourselves clean.
Eric, now let's go to Chris first in San Diego, California. Hey, Chris, go ahead.
Hey, George. I called in. It was Saturday morning, and my girlfriend was dying in the.
I remember. What happened, Chris?
Yeah, she ended up dying right after I talked to you about.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It was tough, and I loved her, Melanie. She's a great love of my life, and I was looking for reasons not to see the sunlight the next day. Really, after your show, and I was fighting that, just to end it all, because she was gone, and I don't know. I made it through. I just kept on thinking about the good times that we would listen to your show when I got home late. I worked late, and we'd lay in bed and listen to your show and laugh, and all the good things that happened to my love. She's a musician like you, George. She sang like an angel, just like a beautiful angel. And she sent some bumper music into it. And she said, "When's George going to play it?" And I said, "I don't, he has a lot of people, Melanie, just try to stay good. But George, if there's any way you could play her bumper music sometime."
Tom might have it in his CD. I'm going to put you on hold, Chris, when you're done. Tom wants to talk to you, okay?
Thank you, George. Thank you so much for helping me through this and give me the strength to go on.
Absolutely. You stay with us. Tom, go ahead, take that call from Chris and get his girlfriend's name, and she's probably got a CD in your bucket there somewhere, where the thousands of them. Yeah, these are tough times for some people, Laurie.
Very, very. It was very sweet the way he cares about you. And what he brings up for me is to say to people, you have to feel the feelings. We're going to have grief, we're going to have depressions, we're going to have anxieties. The discernment is whether or not it really belongs to you. The totality of what you're experiencing. Part of it belongs to you. It's situational, but the chronic enduring doesn't need to be there.
It's pretty emotional sometimes, let me tell you.
Yeah, feel the feelings, but know what is yours and what doesn't feel like it should be there. You know the difference at some intuitive level.
Let's go to Eric in Austin, Texas. Hi, Eric. Go ahead, sir.
George, thank you for taking my call. Yes, I've got a question for you because I'm a very, let's just say I'm a very astute skeptic because of the fact that when you were talking about the new Earth and so forth and so on, I couldn't help but latch on to the fact that you were talking about another form of just dispensationalism, which a lot of spiritual paths have. And if we are truly unified, first of all, I mean, why would some of us be left behind? Why would some of us not be worthy of that higher vibration?
Good question.
If we are all unified, why can't we just go? Why not all instead of only some?
I believe it could be all, but we have a choice. We're in a free will zone. This is a free will zone. And some people, as you can tell by the crazy that's around, are not choosing that, but they're not being left behind. We have to show up and demand our expansion. That's I don't know the word dystonia sensational. Please explain it.
We're running out of time, Laurie.
Okay.
So we're going to have to move on. I want you to give out your website and how people can get a hold of you. Go ahead.
Here Global Foundation is where you can get the free app. It's a digital treatment game to get you to your parietal lobe. And there's a Calendly invite if you want a session with me on George's website.
And, of course, the app?
The app is Here Global Foundation. You can go to Google Play, but it's also, the link is on George's website, but you can go to Here Global Foundation or Here Global, and you sign up for a free app in either your Google Play Store or your App Store.
Super.
And for iOS.
Laurie, thank you again. Let's not let 10 years go by, okay?
Oh, no, we will not do that. All right, big hug, George. Thank you for having me.
For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Burst, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.